What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Manage the Wild podcast. I'm your host, Nick Madsen, sitting with the biologist today. I ride up with him so I don't have to spend my own gas. We're on our way up to feed elk, and we were driving up a canyon, which is a small migration corridor for the elk. And it was kind of fun because he would get on each morning and see where the collars were for the elk that we had collared, where they were at in the canyon, and you can just see the straight march that they are headed towards this urban area that we don't want them to. What's interesting is we're feeding elk on these feed rows to keep the elk from coming down. Elk are leaving the feed rows, migrating down into the valley where there's no feed. Well, there is feed high up on the mountainside, but they can't come into the fields. They're just migrating down the canyon because I guess that's what they always done. What's interesting is we have a lot of yearlings that we collared last year, and you would think the yearlings that spent their whole winter on the feed row wouldn't leave the feed row. Nope, yearlings are headed down. Elk are elk, and they just do what they do. But here's the real conundrum that a biologist faces. The area that we're feeding elk in splits two units. You have a unit on the north, unit on the south, and we're feeding elk and we're congregating elk into this area. The biologist's job is to count all the elk for the area and then create a total number of tags based upon a number of factors. But all the elk are congregating from both units into this area that we're counting. So if you have 700 head coming into your feed row, and then you have another 200 or 300 on the ridges that you can see from where you're counting. Let's say you have 1,000 total elk in the area. Which unit are you going to say those elk are from? So if you say you have 1,000 head and you divide them up, then you'll say 500 are from the north unit, 500 are going to be from the south unit. The challenge is the collars, 80% of the collars are coming from the south unit. So how do you split it up then? Do you say that the majority of the elk lie with the collared elk, or is there just a high concentration of collared elk that are going south, but all the rest of the elk are moving north? That's the challenge to try and understand, and biologists are working on. The other conundrum that you face is both of these units are theoretically under objective, and it depends on how you split these elk that are going into this feed row. So if you say the majority are coming out of the south unit, then all of a sudden you are now at objective, but your north unit is now far below. Not only are they a couple hundred below, but now we're talking 500-600 animals below, which creates a problem because now you have to manage your tags, manage your cow hunts, and depredation and all those things differently. Now, if you split it evenly, then they're both about 200 or 300 animals short of their objective. And so it creates a problem. The other issue you got is that south unit is 90% private, and that north unit is I would say you're 70 to 80% open. It's probably not even that high. You're probably about 60, 65, 70% of it is public land. So you have a large majority of public land on the north unit, virtually nothing on that south unit. So if you say the majority of the elk are in the south unit, the majority of the elk are going to be private elk, and they're inaccessible, but you're also limiting the number of tags you can bring for the public to use on the north end. But then if you say they're all the elk from the north unit that are on that feed row, then you're going to pack a whole lot of hunters into such a small area, and you may not have got it right. And so you're going to have overcrowding issues. There's going to be a lack of elk to harvest because most of those are going to go south. This is the challenge that the biologist is facing. Now, they can play with the numbers a little each year. They can do like a 70-30 split, 80-20 split, 90-10 split. And I was talking to them, and they're going to have their meetings coming up here not too long, because they got to start getting ready for all this, getting their numbers out so they can set objectives and whatnot, and get their permits and the number of hunts and number of tags they're going to send out. And so they're going to have this talk and this meeting. But he said that's the challenge that they face each year with these units is deer, elk, moose. None of these animals respect the boundaries these imaginary lines that we set. And so another issue that he faces in the North unit borders right on Idaho. And a lot of these elk come piling in. So when he's doing his winter classification, seeing what elk are around, he's also got to take that into account, that a lot of these elk are coming out of Idaho, are piling into this unit. And so it makes counting that a little bit difficult as well, because if you have a lot of elk that are coming out of a different state and then they go to hunt, then those elk are not there, and you got a lot of upset hunters. And so it can be challenging. Not only is glassing and classifying animals challenging, but then you have to start to determine where these animals are going. They're throwing out a lot of collars here in Utah, trying to collar as many animals as possible to help them understand movement. But your data could be a little skewed depending on what animals you're collaring and how those animals are moving. It doesn't always give you a clear picture either. So that's some of the challenges that biologists face. So when you are hunting and you're really upset with the way things are, ask a biologist why they did something one way versus another, and then have them walk you through the process on how they got to get there, because it's a lot more complicated than it seems or should be. But this is the conundrum that he's facing right now. You guys have a great day. Stay wild.